Where's that coming through? I guess it is coming through me. Okay. So then I can bring the music down and bring the speaker's volume up a little bit. Get out from under the headphones because the lag there is very noticeable within the room. Oh, let's get rid of, I think I just sent all of my controls to display, but that's okay. Those are the sorts of things that you'd set up in advance. So you had your cameras going, you had your sources going. While I'm on the presenter, you could get out of those slides and prepare to bring up other graphics or the PowerPoint presentation that somebody's using, and mix that in instead. So let's see where we are here. And then we can just fade over to that if we want to.
This is much better, more like platform if you want to do like a basketball game.
I think so.
You go to the canvas, and then you run through your control room, as you watch the game, and you control the switch back and forth between cameras, and get commentary.
Yeah, that's the idea here. I'm not sure where we are on the hour, folks. You could, thank you. Could easily plug in up to 4 cameras on this. Now you're getting into talking about which mixer you have and how you're going to do that. So you can, bring in your graphics. You can have multi-cameras. You can do, simple switching effects between them and so on. I put a lot of effort into making sure I get good audio, so I frequently use an outboard audio mixer with multiple microphones on it, but you don't have to. This has, up to 4 mic levels and then some line levels in, so that may be adequate for your purposes.
So any recommendations on the mixer and the price range?
I actually listed out on these slides everything that I'm using today, with even a price range there. And I like some of the purchase decisions I've made. I'm not in love with all of them. So as I said, I'm not a vendor. There's pros and cons to how you get where we're going. And a lot of the slides following this are really intended to prompt questions and try to shed some more light on what I've done. I was kind of anxious to at least get to this point where I know we successfully pushed this cast, even in a wireless low band scenario here, given to the basement of the cook here. So I'm not displeased with that. We have been talking about bandwidth, which these are my definitions. It's a measure of how much data we can send and receive through an internet connection. That's what bandwidth means to me today in this environment. And that speed test, performed easily with a web browse tool, will tell you exactly where you're at on any given day. So you can begin to adjust your encoder appropriately, or even understand why you're having trouble or have to downgrade what you're sending. It's kind of the more the merrier. The B up means simply the backup, the component to this, if we had downloaded for the secondary stream. And that is controlled by your ISP or your IT guy. And it's really a matter of money. What's the institution or wherever you're at, what's available, as well as what they're paying for. I'm not intimately familiar with things in rural Alaska and how the school districts are set up and their contracts with GCI and so on. I'm kind of curious about those things because everybody wants more these days, and it's an integral part of so much that we're talking about in technology is just the demand on bandwidth and what's available. And I know that it's changing every 3 to 5 years though, and at least it seems to be going up, but I'm not sure what the future is there. But I will check with my own IT guys on campus and make sure if I'm doing an event from a certain location tomorrow that I've got a hot hardwired spot, and I want to know that it's got a rockin' bandwidth available, and on campus we're able to do that, and I can usually get what I need. But those folks are busy too reprioritizing the availability of bandwidth around the campus. And I don't know how much of that it goes on in smaller communities, villages, or within the different school districts or not. But if there's low demand over here on certain days of the week and so on, they'll channel it over to the library where there's always a high demand for bandwidth in our library because students want to be able to sit there with their wireless laptops, etc. So it's a moving target, and it may be open to discussion. I'm ahead of, I should push these things earlier, but it'll make more sense in the recast, which will be archived by the way, and on YouTube for what it's worth. What's coming through that camera may or may not be more valuable in the long run, and I can post that as well. I'll probably just kill this Ustream at this point. I don't know that. We're down to 3 viewers, so switch over to YouTube if you really want to follow along. No, but I can. Yeah, I can talk about some of that openly if you want to. Some of this might be really entry-level stuff to many of you, or not. So you need to be able to distinguish USB 3s from USB 2s if you're not familiar with that, and understand whether, if you're using HDMI, that they come in different sizes, etc. And if you know what a British nut connector is, that's how we're moving SDI signals these days. So that's a pretty popular way to do it. Wasn't going to spend a lot of time on these, but sometimes people are literally going, well, what's an XLR audio cable or something like that? And those are all fair questions, even though I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on the production side of this. We did look a little bit at some of the specs on the encoder here, but I have a still of that up here if anybody wants to go through that. And here's so this will come around in 30 seconds or so to your screen, the hardware that I brought in today to do this. So we'll just wait for the lag, and that I don't have any wardrobe accidents that we could avoid broadcasting. That was supposed to be a joke. I'm using a Canon XA35 camera, $2,100 with an SDI output. I'm just amazed at having what you can get these days in a camera for the money that I used to spend on lenses in the 70s and 80s. That's a heck of a lot of camera. You can record HD video all day long on a couple of cards, and you can push high quality stuff to the internet, and they're small. I haven't broken the second one out to set everything up and go, switching back and forth between cameras, but at this point, that would be a piece of cake to do, to add another camera, just to hook it into the mixer. They're small and light. Yeah. Oh, that's a microphone. That's just a wireless microphone. Yep. And by sending the audio there, it can record the audio on the camera and then subsequently also send it along with the AV signal together to the mixer. This mixer is the expensive part of this. It's a $6,000 retail Roland VR50. And there are things that I like about it. It puts out a great signal and it handles a variety of inputs, particularly video, very nicely. I would give it its when it comes to audio, but it's acceptable. I typically mix my own audio and then just come into this. For me, I would like that it recorded on board here, and it doesn't. There is no internal drive on this. And also, I wish it were more robust in the onboard ability to bring in stills and graphics. It'll only store 4 at a time, for example. So I can have 4 different stills preloaded on this and just go to those. That's better than nothing, but I wish I could do easily lower thirds and things like that on there. In fact, I'm going to, we'll do a lower third before we get out of here just to take a look at that. I didn't set up the audio mixer, but I have an inexpensive little 6-channel audio mixer that I'm actually very fond of for the money. It's a great little workhorse. And I'll just show it to you. It's small and incredibly versatile, and it's $100. And so I've used this a lot. You can get 5 XLR inputs there and some line ins. And that's all it does is mix audio. But I've been very pleased with that. I'm using some, they're pretty robust Dell laptops here. What you want is processing speed. You want RAM and you want quick processors. Who doesn't? That's what everybody wants these days. Memory is cheap. It's the speed that we're all about. And I don't know the price on these. Just put a question mark because even at, I don't know, 3 years old now, I think they're on to new models, and it's hard to assess exactly what these are at. But they've got quad-core i7s in them, so they're pretty good. I use good microphones. I've got Sennheisers. I didn't set up my little Kobe monitor. I like to have a little outboard monitor that's usually just attached to this. And again, it's just another resource for me to confirm, inexpensive as that monitor is, what my signal is. I'm sending color. I'm sending what I think I'm sending. I can turn it up and just confirm audio very easily. Because I'm not usually using the encoder as a confirmation of signal source, although you can. I mean, that we're actually watching YouTube now, so we know that's what's going on there. And then there's a bunch of peripheral things that obviously are critical, but I didn't really itemize them all out. The headphones, the tripod, carts, cases, cables, batteries, you know, it all adds up. The list of actual tools, though, that beyond this hardware is fairly short. And again, I got to learn how to get ahead of myself without getting ahead of myself. That is quite the lag, isn't it? As I say, I'm usually it's between 7 or 8 seconds, not 30-ish. But yeah, the media encoder. I use Photoshop and PowerPoint to generate, you know, some graphics and stills that I've used, and we're using YouTube today, Ustream, and then that speed test site. There is some stuff that I didn't use today that frankly I normally would. You know, fluid head tripods, lights maybe, if necessary, an outboard recorder, which I mentioned earlier, to archive that there. I didn't install a secondary encoder. I frequently am in a large room where I'm doing sound reinforcement as well, and so we might be submixing audio to go to a PA system in the theater or something like that. I already mentioned flash is not actually dead. And once, if you've ever streamed something up to YouTube, it automatically archives that. But sometimes you have a long head to it before you actually launch that you want to cut off, or even something at the end that you want to cut off. You may be able to go into some of these, both Ustream and YouTube, for example, offer you the ability to trim heads and tails, as we call them, so people don't have to figure out, oh, I'm still waiting 8 minutes before the actual content begins on the stored recording. Sometimes I'll put up a secondary recording because, for example, if I take it off the camera today or something like that, that I have edited and it looks better and so on. But you can't, if you replace, you either keep the archive or you don't. If you put up something subsequent, even if it's the same thing, it's a new URL. And that's when you might want to employ one of those tools at the back end of YouTube where you can enhance tools and so on. It'll let you lay a card right over the beginning of your video that says, hey gang, click here for the better recording of this instead of there. But if you want to maintain your analytics and so on, you still want to leave the old archive there. For example, I've got numerous recordings that may have, 500 views initially over here and then 7,000 views on the higher end recording. Same content, but one was the live stream and the other one went up later. When you shut this down, you can do something nice like, just do the auto fades, or take your microphone, you can bring your music bed back up and then fade that out. Go to black, make a soft landing for your viewer. You have to then go into your control and stop the YouTube stream, which I will. And you also have to stop the encoder. So there's two things that are, the encoder is still pushing to YouTube until I tell it to stop, even if I stop YouTube. And YouTube's going to continue to stream until I physically click the button and say stop. I just kind of addressed trimming the heads and tails off of your recorded file. That looks like that may have been what I intended to be the last. But I'm going to see if I can pull off one other little trick here before we take off. Let's see if I got the lower third. Yeah, there's something here. Which screen? You're watching the YouTube screen. So I'm not sure if that's the... No, you're going to get to watch me actually do the composition setup. Let's see if I can do this and do it live. What do you want? Okay, you're there. And yeah, that's actually not, that's not the effect I want. That is, let's go back here. There we go. I want that off, and I want Lumi Black. Oh, come to me. Oh, there we go. I gotta have the right source, and I wanna go, why is that not full screen? Okay, I think I do not quite have what I wanted there. But you can begin to see the effect that I was looking for in a moment, perhaps. I know, but I think I've inverted my source, and let's see if I can. Right. Right, but I have my, I'm looking at my browser window, which is not exactly what so I might have to go in and remove the extraordinaire part of that, part of that title. Plus I'm back up to showing my business behind the scenes. But the point being that you can affect these, what we call lower thirds, and do some branding and identifying and things like that. But I think I need to actually swap my source and overlay here, because I didn't mean to have it housed within the window of the, so maybe I'll just remove that aspect for now. And we didn't have any live chat here, so we didn't really take a tour of any of that. We could have, people could have, I certainly have seen people chatting in on that stuff as you go. That is the watch page. We can go back, so that's the viewer experience, if you will. We can go back to the control room. I see we've been live for 27 minutes. We've had 4 people log into this. The stream is okay. Looking for, there should be one more screen down there, I thought, typically. Anyway, let's go ahead and shut this down and go through that process real quick. It's as easy as stop streaming on the YouTube site in the control room. It does ask me to confirm that's what I intend to do. Oh, and before I do, I will go to black